In today's podcast, we learn whether or not inhaling structured water and increasing moisture can result in cellular tissue repair.
It got a bit spicy, not gonna lie. I may have taken a bit over there in the lab results section, grilling Rowena, who is the founder of Eng3, on some of the science and the mechanism behind this stuff. But it honestly ended up better than I thought it would. And at the very end, we decided if NanoV, which is the product that we were talking about today, is useful and effective at the things that they claim on their website. And what Chloe and I decided was,
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Decision Lab podcast. Today, we are so excited to interview Rowena Gates, the founder of Eng3. Welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here. Good to see you guys.
great to have you on. Fellow Canadians, welcoming each other is always a fun time. Tell us a little bit about you. We like to kind of start broad. Tell us a little bit about like your life journey. Like what made you into the person you are today?
Wow, that goes back a long time. Okay, when I was little, I lived in the wilderness in Canada, so we were very off-grid. And it was amazing for a little kid. So that was up in British Columbia. Ultimately, I went on and studied education, and I taught high school for a little while. I decided I wanted to go back to university and teach at a higher level, teach at the university level. And after I finished my PhD, I recognized that the jobs weren't in places that I wanted to live, and it just didn't resonate. And my business background from doing my PhD research, which, by the way, was collaboration of Canadian companies for more Canadian content at the time. It was strategic alliances, which were new back then. And so it was very much a business topic. So I switched into consulting, first of all. And then one of the companies I was consulting to, the guy who owned that company said, let's co-found a new company, internet-based e-commerce in the transportation industry. So that was 1995.
Hey, my birth. Let's
So
go.
we were super early for business to business on the internet. Actually, we were super early for anything on the internet.
And that was this company, Eng?
That was a company that was called Passage. And then I started another company called Aviarc that was what you call today cloud-based, but at the time we were running a rack of 5 servers to manage other people's data for them. We'd transfer it and store it for them, so all they had to do is access us through the internet. Well, this was way before Amazon Web Services or anything that would make it easy. And so that was my next company. And then where we get to Eng3 is I'd sold that company. I'd worked with them for a couple years and I was going to take a break. And my partner, Hans Eng, is German and he needed help with English and other things. So I said, well, I'll help you. Well, I was supposed to be taking a break and he was importing at that time other products out of Germany that were health related. And then I got into the health space and it helped people. And I was like, this is really cool. This is way better than just, business to business on the internet. And so I never left, but that was a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. But I really got so enthusiastic and I've remained that way because what we're doing really helps people. And I love that. It's a great way to show up in the world.
That's cool. I feel like we breezed over your PhD. Like, I feel like that's a huge part of somebody's life. Like, what was your research on? What was your dissertation on? Like, tell us more about your PhD.
Okay. It's 4 years and it's the most sort of indulgent thing you ever get to do because you're studying what you're interested in. My interest was really regional economic development. So how do you make people's lives better quality jobs, improve the economic well-being of a region? And one way I thought was interesting was this new form of organization, which was partnering with companies instead of, up until then, it had been leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers. And it was very much the 80s was a very combative zero-sum game. And I was just like, I just don't believe that. I think there's got to be good business that can be done by collaborating. And that would be good for everybody, including the region, so that companies don't leave Canada or any other region to end up in these centers that sponsor innovation. But maybe there's ways to access markets and help companies grow without having to locate out of their home region and therefore creating all this value to their local environment. And so it was very business oriented, but I was really doing it from a development standpoint. So It was
Damn,
cool.
that's cool. I
Mine
like
was,
that.
I'm sure it's the first PhD on strategic alliances. There,
Yeah, no
there'd
kidding.
been a couple on joint ventures, but it was a very new way of thinking at the time, which sounds funny today because we collaborate all over the place.
That is so cool. Is there anything that stands out in your mind where you're like, this specific thing changed the way I think about business or even my own life?
Yes. One thing that stands out, I mean, going back to that time was my research showed, because I did pretty extensive research, it showed basically the success of partnerships was inversely related to how much paperwork was involved in forming them.
That makes sense to me, dude. I
Yeah.
100% anecdotally
Don't you
can agree.
love that? It's like at that time, lawyers are just papering everything. And it's like, no, we need to get to know each other and we need to trust each other. And that's what succeeded.
That is
That's
beautiful.
really cool.
Yeah, and
I
then
I
and
love
the
that.
whole thing is, and it's what we do today, and what I've always tried to do is like not just a win-win situation, but a win-win-win situation. Like how can we really make this work for the customer, the center that's operating or whatever, our company, everybody should come out ahead. And I've never lost that collaborative aspect of things. And that's still what I do today, and I love it.
That's beautiful. Generally, people don't escape business and entrepreneurship without some bumps along the way. What have been some of the big obstacles that you've had to overcome?
In the mid 90s, I'd say, when we were raising money, there were no women. It was a very interesting environment. It was fine at the time, but when I look back on it, I think, oh God, that was rough. I mean, some things were really rough. And I never really thought about it at the time. So that was one of it. It was just the women that were running companies and raising capital were few and far between. So that would be one big one. I probably could go on a long time, but always, and as a result of that, partly as a result of that, and likely for many other reasons, it was running companies that you never had a ton of cash. And in that day, if you got $500,000, you might be really happy. Today, people are raising 10 million.
Yeah, it's
So
wild. It's a ribbon. Specifically in relation to the challenge that you ran into as a woman, what were some of the specific obstacles or challenges that you ran into being one of the few?
one thing was this is more personal, so I'll just kind of go into my side of it instead of talking about other people, which would be the other men in the room, was that I recognized that I kind of tailored myself to show up as one of the guys. And so I realized that I kind of lost a whole side of myself that was the more feminine side that was okay to show up because you're bringing something different to the table. I mean, I didn't do that for years. I was just like, sort of shut down on that side of it, which I look back and again, I'm like, well, that's crazy because you got value, to have both at the table. So that was one of the ones that I didn't recognize until later.
Wow. How'd you recognize it?
I think part of it was an imbalance in me, and part of it was a lot of people would say things like, "Well, you don't know how to receive. You're not in flow. You're just, one-sided and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's kind of that whole feminine side where you just." And then that's when I started to explore it, and I started to recognize, oh yeah, like I'm pretty shut down.
Not everybody escapes that. My work as a trauma therapist specializes with ambitious women on this exact thing, actually. In my research,
I forgot that you did that work as well. It's like, oh my gosh, I need your number.
it
No,
sounds like you're doing awesome. The awareness is huge. I mean,
and
but it does a
also that
number
I
on the
mean,
nervous system.
some of the things that I said I can't go there is because they are traumatic. There's stuff,
Oh,
but that
yeah.
was a long time ago. But you just sort of incorporate that rather than working through it. So, but
Yeah.
there were some things that were pretty, especially in Europe. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that or did that or whatever. And I did have one wonderful man. It was out of LA. We were meeting at Geneva, and after we got back to the US, he called and said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, whoever the name was, acted like that in the US, he'd be followed around by a Greyhound bus full of and
Jeez.
I was just like, oh, Mike, thank you, because he saw it and he acknowledged it, which was really sweet of him. And it meant the world to me.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
So
I love that. It's interesting. I'm glad you kind of got out of that bubble. It sounds like you've made tremendous progress on these things. That's awesome. What about longevity? Like, speaking of nervous system regulation, what sparked your interest into like the longevity space?
it really is regenerative health, and that turns out to be longevity. And so my interest really is in helping the body heal itself, and it knows what to do. So you just support the foundation. And then as a result, it ends in all those benefits like performance and longevity and, a sense of well-being. All of those things are sort of, but to me, it's like address the foundation and then each person's going to behave differently after that.
Was there any personal piece that lent you into that regenerative space? Was it, or how did you get there?
Well, I have a really long history of my own health issues, but they are, and I've just been, had them throughout, and it stemmed from a very bad car accident. And so it's been the last 2 years or so that, I feel great. And after all those years of, being too uncomfortable to sleep type of thing. And now it's like, oh man, I'm ready to just go crazy. And I feel so good, and I can do all kinds of stuff I hadn't been able to do.
What things made the healing switch for you?
I counted 22 different modalities. I did everything. And my first step was to recover from long thoracic nerve damage, which left me without the use of my right arm, much of the use of my right arm.
Wow.
And my shoulder was collapsed by 4 inches. And that was unrecoverable according to the neurologists, like 3 of them. But according to me, it was not. And so that was a very challenging journey because there was nothing, we're talking the 90s. I'm doing energy medicine. I'm doing everything. And it took a while. But then it was sort of unraveling all the rest of that over many years with the help of many wonderful people. And I'll just say, because you asked the turning point, but the really big one for me was called Feldenkrais. And it's retraining the brain to regain patterns and kind of relearn how it should be. And Feldenkrais shows it. So then the brain will catch on. And in my case, my nerve wasn't fully severed, but it was beyond repair, they said. But it's like, nah. And so with Feldenkrais, they could make it talk again, and it came back online.
And what is Feldenkrais? Is it a mechanism, like a PT type thing? Is it a device? Is it a medicine? What is it?
There's 2 types. There's either manual therapy, which is kind of like a PT thing, but very subtle, very different, and very integrating the whole system. And then they also have what's called awareness through movement, which is more like a yoga class, only it's just fine movements, like the tiniest thing. Turn your head and move your eyes and things. And then at the end of the session, you're like, oh my gosh, I have way more flexibility in my neck, And so it's pretty amazing. It's been around for quite a long time. It's originally a physicist. You guys would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's cool. You'd be surprised how much of your flexibility is nervous system related as opposed to like muscle elasticity related.
Right.
So that's cool. Well, I'm glad you made the recovery. That's awesome. It sounds like you're on the path now and helping people with devices and all sorts of stuff with what you're doing now. So let's move to the claim to fame. Let's talk about NanoV. Like the question we like to ask when we start out this section is just kind of a rapid fire one. So just tell us what NanoV is and why we should care in 60 seconds. We'll go deeper, but just 60 seconds.
What NanoV is, it's a device about the size of a small printer. You breathe humidity from the device and it influences the water in your cells in a way that supports all cellular activities, specifically protein folding.
Got it. Okay. And that is supposed to benefit you in what way?
Proteins do all the work in the body. There's nothing that gets done without proteins being involved. And you're made up mostly of proteins. And the last thing they have to do before they can function is they have to fold from a long chain of amino acids into a 3-dimensional shape. And they get the energy to fold from the water. And NanoV helps provide the state of the water that supports that protein folding.
I'm excited to get in the science on this one. Before we get there, though, there are other companies that, there are just humidifiers, right, that you could use. There are other companies that claim to do similar things. Why use NanoV specifically?
Well, there are other companies, there's certain things NanoV does that other companies have products that can do, like improving the autonomic nervous system dramatically. And you can do that in various ways. But overall, this is so much more fundamental than that. And to give viewers a sense of this is we talk about our DNA a lot. But DNA only has one purpose. It's the blueprint for proteins. So if you're supporting proteins, you're supporting literally everything. And that might show up as the autonomic nervous system, or it might show up as an autoimmune, or on and on and on, whatever your body needs to do. And so the humidity is only a delivery mechanism. That's how we get the coherent water droplets from the device to the body. And so there's lots of humidity, but our humidity has been bombarded with specific wavelengths. And that's what the difference is. And that's the whole, inside of the technology, is to change the energy state of those water droplets that are then delivered.
How did this start? Like, how does one think about, humidity? I want to shoot that with these random particles or this specific wavelength of light and then shove it into people's noses. And how does one come to that conclusion? And
well, there was a lot of this is already foundational in cell biology, and the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany had already done some early work on looking at the impact of this ordered water having a regenerative benefit. So there was some early work done. And basically in cell biology, they already knew that the proteins had to fold, and the proteins got the energy to fold from the water. And the state of the water was considered ordered, or it meant the water molecules were packed closely together. So it's a highly structured, highly ordered, highly organized state that forms in layers on the proteins. And that was already known, and they knew that because this is driving protein functions, which is all of life, they knew it had to come from inside the body. And inside the body, that water is ordered by a signaling reactive oxygen species that emits a specific wavelength that is absorbed by water and changes it into this more coherent state. And that coherence is also called easy water or fourth phase of water, if anybody's following Gerald Pollack's work. And so that part was already known, that it was known the body did this. And eventually our innovation, and I say our, which is actually Hans Eng's innovation, was to say we can emit that very specific signal outside of the body, because years ago they didn't have the technology that could do that. But as that technology became available, it's like we can emit it with specific wavelengths against the water droplets. And so the very first NanoV only copied the body. It had the wavelength that the body produced that we just did kind of artificially and augmented. And then we did extensive testing with a group out of Italy, and they showed that other wavelengths were even more powerful to create the water that was needed, the ordered water. And so we added those wavelengths as those technologies became available. The very high end in our biggest device, our most powerful device, it's hard to come by. It's still a new enough technology that it's not even easy to find suppliers for it.
Interesting. Who's the ideal client for this? Who do you, there's all sorts of influencers and celebrity people, but who is the everyday consumer? Who is the ideal person?
Well, what's ideal to me would be centers where people can access it, because that way many people can share one device.
Nice.
And you just cannot get a lower cost than that, because it doesn't matter how many people use it. It's built to last for absolutely ages. But that way, when you share the cost and then there's no ongoing cost to operating, it becomes really accessible compared to almost anything else. And so that's my ideal. I'd love to get it in more shared places. Where it lives right now is more people that can afford it, lots of people that can just buy their own, or in usually their treatment centers, either integrative medicine or chiropractors, naturopaths, so on, or performance centers.
Got it.
Makes a lot of sense. What's the transformation that someone could expect to have when using the NanoV?
It depends what they're transforming, right? And so one of the obvious things, easy to measure, is HRV. And the recent study showed a 45% drop in the stress index, which is pretty substantial. And then a 19% gain in the parasympathetic. So that's something that most people notice. We also notice, most of us will notice more sort of energy, mental clarity. It often shows up in the brain, because super healthy people aren't probably going to feel it in their body, but they might get that little lightness, little clarity, more focus, more endurance in the brain. And we've also shown with studies that it improves oxygen utilization significantly. And so when you're using the oxygen better, rather than just adding more, you're using it better, the cell's functioning better. It often shows up in the brain, but it can show up all over as energy levels, especially if somebody's low or somebody's jet lagged. That's another good one. And those are the things that a lot of people will notice. And then another one is related to that is better sleep. But the other thing that people really notice is if they exercise, if they work out, they recover faster. And that's very obvious, especially when somebody does a regular routine and then they're measuring watts on a bicycle. So easily, a 10% gain in watts, that kind of thing on the performance side. So it depends what people are measuring and how tuned in they are.
Nice. I think it's a great time to move into the lab section here because there's a lot of some of the core mechanisms, some of the research and things that you're describing. I'd love to dive deeper into. Let's start with the core mechanism here. This ordered water or easy water is it is a thing for sure. And it's been shown on like hydrophilic surfaces hydrophilic is like water loving surfaces. In deep molecular and like biophysical states and things like that. Making the leap over into practical application to medicine or like outcomes is a pretty big one though. So could you tell us more about the research you've done around this, or how do you like reconcile the claims around ordered water, easy water with like the lack of evidence around like therapeutic medical application?
Well, it's interesting. When we first met Gerald Pollack, he was like, oh my gosh, I essentially hypothesized that this should be possible. And you guys have already built it. That has been a real challenge for us. Exactly what you're saying is that it's too new. And you mentioned biophysics, and people, Chloe included, we're used to biochemistry, right? And so when you talk about having a big impact just with biophysics, that's often very foreign. And so that has been a reason that it's not better known probably, or it's taken longer. So as you point out, you got to have the studies, right? And so we have published studies on the water that comes out of the device. We've published studies on the different wavelengths and how impactful they are. And you mentioned that that ordered water, easy water, forms on surfaces. And that's been another challenge is you don't do this to a whole glass of water. This only happens on surfaces. And inside the cells, there's a lot of surface area for proteins. But that's been a challenge. But what we did is we studied the device itself. We studied the output, which is the water. And then we studied humans. And we could study humans forever. But what we've done is only tried to focus on things that are fundamental, so not specific diseases. We never make disease claims. And so we're looking at things that are like DNA damage or inflammatory markers or oxygen utilization. And the one big study we have is on proteins themselves. And that's published in the International Journal of Molecular Science. So it's a big publication, but it's showing the recovery from damage, so they intentionally damage the proteins with heat, chemicals, or oxidation. And the conclusion is that NanoV was beneficial both preventatively and for the recovery of the proteins. And they assume that NanoV helped prevent damage because it made the proteins more stable and less susceptible to the damage of free radicals.
Something to clarify, this research was with horseradish enzymes in a petri dish, not inside of a human. So that
correct.
My question, sorry?
Yeah, only proteins can't, and then other studies measure the humans, but it's also peroxidase and catalase, and there's other enzymes that are measured in that study.
Oh yeah,
right?
For sure.
Yeah.
My point more is that it's not in a human, which is making a claim about something in a petri dish is different than saying, oh yeah, we did this in humans, we measured this in humans and things. So, and that's one of the biggest things about the research, at least my review of it, is a lot of it is there's not a ton yet in humans. And I would imagine because the science is so new, that there's, how could you measure these things?
Yeah.
It would be hard to measure the effects of these types of things, which we'll get into when we get into like claims and stuff you guys make. But that's my question is, what about the research around in humans and things like that?
Our starting point is like we say we influence proteins, we need to show we influence proteins. So that's just like one piece of research is on proteins.
Mm-hmm.
But then the
Makes
next
sense.
thing is to have double-blind placebo-controlled on humans, and then other research on humans that's some currently underway, but other pieces of it. But you do have to show you perform against a placebo. And that research was done on athletes because it's okay to stress them and create a lot of oxidative damage. And that's okay. It's not like you can just take old people and do that. And so that was really compelling results for the reduction in lactate in the blood and also in the improvement in the immune response for faster recovery. So that's where we say, we can verify that people recover faster, which is also their experience.
Right. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what else is controlled for in some of those as well. The other thing that I noticed is that a lot of, which this is a good or bad problem to have necessarily. Some companies have like zero research, but a lot of yours is sponsored by you guys. It's internal and it's mostly on your website. There's a few in reviewed like journals and things like that. Do you guys have any third-party verification process or anything that you do for that?
Yeah, most of us are actually there's been like all the double-blind placebo control stuff was completely independent of us. That was university research. Also, there was, well, like we don't really talk about it. There's cancer research. It was along the same lines that was independent of us. The DNA study was an Olympic Training Center, again, independent of us. So some of it was, but you can only get so far. And one of the reasons some of these things weren't published more thoroughly, for example, that damage by radiation that was done at an oncology center, is they wanted us to pay them to go to the next step. And we're like, well, we can't really talk about cancer anyway, so we wouldn't invest in that. And so they didn't publish it, but we got the results.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see some of these. Because I went through every research paper that was on your website and I couldn't find some of the ones that you're describing here.
Oh,
I'm sure I missed
none
them.
of our research is at our website because for compliance reasons. So it's
What?
yeah, that's what the compliance specialist says. Now, today it might not matter because I don't think anybody's watching, but that putting those out there was problematic. And so what we do is we give them to people, but they have to be requested. And that's not problematic.
That's
So
wild.
they should not be searchable on the internet. You should not be able to find any.
Why would you not want that?
Well, we would want it, but it's a compliance issue. So, for example, if you have a smaller study and you publish it as if it's just everybody would believe it's the be all and end all, that would be misleading. And so it depends on how substantial it is of whether it's a liability or not. But that was just our compliance review. And they're like, no, you can't do this.
What is this compliance review? Like this, who did this? Because it's just
you always have either a compliance officer or a lawyer go through the content. Because for a company like ours, if we go outside of compliance and we get in trouble, it's absolutely hugely devastating.
Yeah, I
And
bet.
so all of us live in fear a little bit.
I bet, which is good and bad. I mean, I guess it's just confusing to me that there are still claims, anti-aging claims and things like that you guys make on your website.
Yeah.
But then when there is, you have to request research or it's just not there available.
Yeah.
It seems like that is even more sketchy than having at least a small sample size. And you could be transparent and just say, hey, this is a small sample size. Here's what we're starting to find. We're doing research. We're moving in the right direction. It just seems like that would be, why would the compliance person not say that?
I don't know, but the thing is we see, because anti-aging, longevity, better sleep, feeling more vital are not medical claims. There's no claim there. And so those are things we say all over the place. So it's pretty nuanced. That language is pretty closely reviewed. You'll also notice that, well, it's used for this instead of it does this kind of thing. So there's a lot of nuance in that language that people get paid real money to do.
Right. I mean, it's just interesting. And how do you think about that when marketing, and how do you think about that like with users and things? Because that comes off as sketchy, even if your intention is not that, if you know what I mean.
And we all have, everybody's got these issues out there. Like it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just us. But one thing we do is, for example, we have a return option on the device. It doesn't work for you, send it back. It's like, because at the end of the day, that's what matters, is that it's beneficial to whoever buys it, regardless of what everything else says. And so we get conditions all the time. So for one thing, we've had I've counted over 50 chronic illnesses that we have results for. But we can't talk about those. But we get those calls all the time. And some of them are like, well, it should work, try it. Because the bottom line, it's got to work for them. But I hear what you're saying about you want to win out against a placebo for sure.
Right.
And that and more is better. And we're really adding more and more. After this call, I have one with our, science officer on research that we're currently doing. We've done some mitochondrial testing. We've done oxygen utilization in the brain, which you guys would be interested in.
Yeah, I'd
And
be fascinated by that.
so it's ongoing, and then you build it up till you get the big enough sample sizes. So right now we're at the pilot stage of a bunch of different things.
Okay.
And one other thing that's not published is the group that did the proteins. The next phase of that study was on humans. And we just started that, and we could show improvements to total antioxidant activity, which was great. And then the sanctions against Russia, where the research was being done, just shut everything down. And so
Oof.
when we can, if we can, we'll pick that back up, because they've done
Is this like a Canadian thing or a German thing about the research and like not being able to publish it? Or like, I've just never heard this before. Like, why would you not want to this would be I would love to see this.
I know. But
Like, I just don't get
an
it.
FDA thing. And if you look at labeling, like labeling claims, and it's to the point that if you said something and I was compensating you for sales, that's our problem.
Yeah.
And so
We see that a lot. Yeah.
And maybe like in the current environment, the pendulum shifts. The current environment, compliance is not a huge concern. But there are other times when companies are getting hit, and I know them. And you start worrying. And so this all happens at the back end, where it's invisible, hopefully, to most people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to see some of this research. I don't if you send us research and we talk about it, or like link to it or things like that, does that get you guys in trouble?
Nope. As long as I'm not paying you.
Okay, well,
no
one is paying us. I can assure you that we do this for free and stay unbiased.
You guys are experts, and you can say whatever you want, and doctors say whatever they want, right? And so that's a great way to get information out.
Okay, well, yeah, I'd love to see some of this stuff. It'd be awesome. It's wild. I didn't know it was quite like that in relation to some of the stuff. Are there any like outline pathways or like mechanisms that you could kind of help people kind of understand, or like a hypothesized mechanism of how breathing in this water vapor is supposed to help them?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's pretty well known. What happens is when the water droplet hits the mucous membrane, you've got water-to-water connection in the body. More than 99% of the molecules in the body are water. So we're largely water. It's very connected. So if you put energy in, it will transfer through that water. And people might think of it like dropping a rock into a pond and the waves going out until it hits the surface. When it hits the edge of the pond, it changes. It breaks there. And that would be like going across the water till it hits a protein. When it hits that protein, that's when the ordered water or easy water, those layers build up on the surface of the protein. And so that energy moves through the body. It's called ultrafast transfer. It just goes throughout the body very rapidly, and it goes everywhere. So if somebody's got inflammation in their foot, it can have the same impact as if they had inflammation in their neck or somewhere closer to where they're inhaling it, because this is transferring through the body.
When the easy water hits the membrane of the protein or the cell, what is it supposedly doing that provides these benefits?
It's going to go through the cell membrane. Is going to be largely water, and there's a lot of gating proteins in the cell membrane that allow the cell to operate. It'll affect that, but it'll go through that to the proteins inside the cell, DNA and so on, everything inside the cell. And that's where the ordered water can accumulate. It can accumulate on any surface. It's just that The only one that's absolutely known to rely on the water is proteins. The mitochondria might, but that's not been shown in science, so we don't talk about that, although we improve mitochondrial function. So there's mitochondrial protein, so that can explain an improvement in function, but it is also possible that there's some mechanisms that drive mitochondria where they get energy from the water. But only proteins are known scientifically.
Is the how they're utilizing it known? Like, how are these proteins benefiting from this water? Is that
Sure. Yeah.
is that
It's
known?
hydrophobic, hydrophilic, the bonding. There's all kinds of bonding that goes into creating a three-dimensional protein that's functional. And so in order for the chain of amino acids, a long chain like a chain of pearls, when it folds into this complex shape, it has to have connections between different amino acids and side chains that hold it into that shape. And that's all kinds of bonding. There's ionic bonding, there's chemical bonding, there's hydrogen bonding. And so those are holding it together. And the energy for hydrogen bonding, for some of that bonding, is coming from the water. So that
Interesting.
there's certain side chains that essentially hook different pieces of the amino acid together. And then if it doesn't hook together correctly, then you have a misfolded protein. And that's the case for something like sickle cell anemia. There's just a little error, genetic error, so it doesn't fold correctly. And you end up with a hemoglobin cell that's curved instead of normal. And that's why it's called sickle cell.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm surprised you guys aren't looking at like Golgi or like ribosomes or some of like the like endoplasmic reticulum and like things like that, like that are like more directly related to like protein synthesis, protein folding.
We're relying on the body of science that exists. And so we have to have that. We could never do all this stuff. So that's where that was already known. And I should mention what's specific about the wavelengths that we use and the body use is they're parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that are absorbed by water. So you think of red lights or something, that's 600 to 700 nanometers, kind of in that range. Lasers are a little higher, maybe up to 1,000 nanometers or even 1,100 nanometers. Our device doesn't start until around 1,300 nanometers. And the reason we pick our wavelengths is the other ones go through the water. The ones we pick are absorbed by water. And when they're absorbed, they change the energy state of the water. And that's what makes this technology different from anything else out there, because we're really going after a different side of it. Basically, other things try to go through the cells, through the water, and hit biomolecules like the mitochondria or something and have an impact. And there's lots of things that can be done that way. We've got the opposite approach. We're going from sort of the inside out with just affecting the environment in the cell, the water in the cell. And then after that, it kind of the body takes over from there. And see, I would say it's possible it affects the mitochondria, the ribosomes, the whatever, that's all possible. It's just not known. And so the proteins are really known.
It'd be interesting to understand it because a lot of the research that when I looked at easy water, it's affecting the surfaces of cells and membranes. Your cell membrane is a phospholipid bilayer that it's really hard to get through. And it has not been necessarily shown. It's been shown to like form a connection on top of that, but not inside of the cell, which is how you get to a mitochondria. So I'd love to see research on easy water getting through that phospholipid bilayer as opposed to it.
Would be stuff with Gerald Pollack, I should say, because that's been his fascination. And basically that the cell membrane isn't really a barrier. It's actually quite a different animal than the way we've often looked at it. And so that it would be easy water that's doing this gating across it.
So it's like getting through some of the channels.
Through the...
Interesting. Yeah, we might have to have him on. We have the other half of what we do is expert interviews where we bring on like neuroscientists, biologists, like things like that, and talk to them about their research and what they're finding and stuff, and just the state of science communication in general. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
to get to ask him some of these questions as well. I mean, 'cause I don't mean to just grill you. I mean, I don't
No,
expect you to
no.
know advanced biophysics, but I'm just curious.
He's the guy, and he's a great person. So
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Has there been any studies or anything that's done on like long-term effects of NanoV use?
We have one that's piloted on, which isn't long term, but it's a month's daily use, and
Okay.
that was great results, actually, quite profound in some respects. Still a pilot, but long term is it's just a little harder. It is something that it's interesting. But compliance is also, it's hard to get people not to do other stuff. And that's why so many of our studies are before and after one session, because no other stuff can come into play.
Right. Those
And
confounding variables like really mess with research. So that was my next question.
we did one, we started a study where it was leading up to Christmas kind of, but it was before Christmas. And this was an older population. They're not big partiers. It was probably going to be okay. And then I saw the data on the impact to the brain and brain performance over that period. And I'm like, we can't do a study now. Halt, because some of the testing's expensive. And it's like, no, we can't do that. That's not going to be a good idea.
It is refreshing to hear you guys are at least like doing research and trying to do studies and like on that path. That's beautiful, especially in this space. It's not always possible for companies.
It's a trade-off between price and, and doing studies and also keeping the price low. We've never raised the price on this device. We absorbed what happened during the pandemic with the increased cost of the supply chain. Actually, one of the smaller devices we did have to put up because we couldn't do it. But then the thing is, people don't really want to pay for it because it's expensive. And
Yeah.
when you add that to the price of the device, it's like, yeah, just try it. If it doesn't work, send it back.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that we noticed when we were collecting comments and stuff from some of our like audience and Reddit and things like that is price was something that was hard for a lot of people. The daily user or the average consumer, I guess.
I mean, if it were in a gym or even a community center, a retirement home or something, it's like, well, almost endless people could use one device, and like you can't even find it. Most supplements, you can't do that cheaply. Like it's really a low cost and a high benefit. But
when you frame it that way, it made so much more sense to me that when you said that was your ideal, I was like, oh, okay. So it's like one sale to a larger company that could afford something like that and almost unlimited use to lots of people. It's not necessarily meant to be a consumer device that Cody has in his apartment and Chloe has in her apartment. Like it's supposed to be. Becomes
elite, and that's not what we're on this planet to do. Another area is corporate wellness, but a lot of corporations aren't in the office. But I have to say, where it's used in corporate wellness, it remains elite, where it's not for the warehouse workers at lunch. It's for the executives because you can show better executive function, brain function.
Damn.
And so it's like, it's hard we're trying to navigate that path, but I'd love for it to be in every gym out there and people could just go work out, do a session, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I got to get one of my CrossFit gym. That'd be awesome. What about side effects, downsides? Like, is there anything that you guys have seen or found anecdotally or in any research or studies?
There's no contraindications. Okay. However, there's two areas where you have to go slowly. If a person's got a heavy toxic load, they will detox. The cell's going to want to dump the toxins. It's going to be good for you, but you don't want to make it so uncomfortable that they get skin rashes or headaches or diarrhea. So if somebody's got a lot of toxins, they should start with a small amount of time and build up. Damn. And then the other one is interesting where it can get uncomfortable because for athletes, especially we've seen this in mixed martial arts, they have old injuries, never properly resolved, and those injuries can start to get inflamed in what you've talked about before, recently, I believe, which is an inflammatory process that is your healing response. Do not shut it down. Heal. And so what happens is they use the NanoV, it kicks in that response. They'll get a full resolution, but in the meantime, it can get uncomfortable. And don't ice it, let it heal.
Interesting. So the mechanism, like you're saying, goes in through the nose. Like it looks like if you've ever seen like a stereotypical old person who has oxygen in their nose type thing, that's what it looks like.
I've got one right here. Can I show you?
Perfect. Yeah, hell
Yeah, that's
yes. Yeah, it's
perfect.
visual.
Okay.
It's a video.
First of
So
all,
yeah,
we're going to start with the nose, which is the
there we go.
oxygen person. It also can be used from just this tube. So you can breathe it like this if somebody's still. And then this is my desk. Excuse me, it's probably a mess. That's the actual device. This is what it looks like. And so I keep it at my desk. I use it while I'm working. So that's what we're talking about, everybody. And also I had an interview recently and they said, I thought this thing that I see, I thought
Was the
it
mic.
was a
Yeah.
microphone and they're
Yeah.
doing it while they're on calls, but that's what it looks like. And it's just the bubbling water is creating the humidity. And then you just inhale it, usually with the cannula, because that way, if you turn your head to whatever, it still works. Whereas with the tube, you have to hold still.
Is there a recommended dosage, or is like, can you just do this all day type of thing, or like what's how
You
often are you
can.
doing this?
I'll do it like I'm usually going to get an hour in or something throughout the day because I'm working mostly at my desk. But a real recommendation I got from Kayla Barnes, I don't know if she does brain performance, was that use it before sleep. And I was like, oh man, it really makes a measurable difference if you use it in the evening, even though I was already using it during the day. But then with the HRV studies, if it drops you out of the sympathetic mode, and our studies with continuous monitoring showed that happened at about minute 7 or 8, just getting that far. So just the first 10 minutes are going to drop you out of that stress phase and you're going to sleep better. And then the parasympathetic starts building at about minute 13 or 14. So it takes longer. So the recommendation is do 20 minutes before you go to sleep. And that does set you up for a better night's sleep. And then people,
Dude,
they
the
measure it
claim
on their
y'all should
Oura
make
ring.
is vagus nerve stimulation. Like all the breathing and things that you're describing is such a direct effect on the vagus nerve. I would be so surprised if a lot of the benefits and things you're describing, especially affect HRV, was vagus nerve related and just diaphragmatic breathing and deeper breathing you're going to be doing while that thing is going. Like you're more
Do it
conscious of your
all,
breath.
because like so many things in health and well-being, people can do themselves at zero cost. They're like big in nature, food and so on. It's just that with our lifestyle, we tend to not be able to pull it off. But breathing alone and calming your mind and all these things, you can improve your HRV that way. You don't need a device to do it. It's just that this is sort of like, a quick fix almost.
Well,
But
just
do
it
them
seems like
all.
that'd be almost an easier claim than the easy water, because that feels like that mechanism clicks for me well, because I study the nerve. I mean, the HB axis, the autonomic nervous system is like what I specifically research. And when you said that, I was like, oh, dude, their breathing pattern is changing while this is, when you showed like how you breathe it in and stuff, I was like, oh, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why people would get some of these benefits, even if you didn't bring up the easy water at all, you could get some of the benefit. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying like it makes sense to me.
We shouldn't, but that's only for you
I mean,
guys.
low key.
We don't talk about easy water. It's just like people want to know, generally what it does and how it could help them. And yeah, we don't get into all this water stuff with other people. That's just for you.
Perfect. Okay, that makes sense probably. Let's move into what we lovingly call the skeptical buyer section, which is where we a lot of people don't get to talk to the founders of the products they want to buy and stuff. But we get to. So we like to ask questions that people submit to us and stuff that we find on like reviews and things like that. Chloe, you want to kick us off? Sometimes when we get into the science, I take over a little bit. I apologize. Chloe is still here, everyone.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, aside from price, like what are the most common criticisms or skepticism you get from people that are really hesitant to buy it or try it?
Well, one about the device itself is make it portable, make it small. And it's like, you have no idea what's going on in there. There's a lot of stuff inside the thing.
Mhm.
But especially athletes, like they want to just take it with them. And then you mentioned skepticism, which is kind of different. It's really around biophysics. It's like, give me a drug, give me a substance, whatever. And how could it help with, say, antioxidant activity if it's not an antioxidant? The answer is for something like glutathione to work or any of them, it's all protein functions that make all that stuff work. Every biochemical process, even if it involves a substance that comes from somewhere else. And so that biophysics piece is always a challenge for us.
I bet it is. That's one of the things in the, we examined the, like kind of the marketing tactics and things like that. We had a really cool neuroscientist on, actually, Dr. Christoph Morin, who like created the field of neuromarketing. So it was really interesting, but we like to examine different marketing things that people do. Something that you guys rely on heavily, which makes more sense after you talking about the compliance and research thing, is testimonials and things like that, instead of like the research and the data that you're not allowed to publish. So I'm just curious how you guys think about those types of things, especially like appeals to authority. Like you've got Dave Asprey on there. People are like, oh, Dave Asprey, yes, let's do it. Or confirmation bias, only showing like the positive benefits or positive results and things like that. How do you square that in marketing?
We probably don't. We probably,
Fair.
what we're doing is we are gaining access through people that know and love the device. So we don't work with anybody that hasn't been using it and loving it, basically. And then that's how we make the introductions to other people. So we're very heavily referral based as a company, and we always have been, because getting the word out is a challenge. And from a marketing perspective, we're very homegrown. And that's partly because we did not bring in big investment. We did not take the normal path of many companies. And so we're self-funded. And it means that it's pretty organic. And sometimes organic is sort of just growing wild. And so less curated than a lot of company marketing would be. And recently we put out more of the customer testimonials in social media. And so that it would look pretty heavy in that respect. But that's really just more on the social media side, online side.
It'd be awesome if you guys could figure out how to get some of this research out or published or something, because part of what research does is publish the good and the bad, right? Because if I'm not saying this is true, but like hypothetically, this is where this becomes an issue with anecdotal and like positivity bias in research.
Yeah.
Is if 110 people try the thing and one of them says three of them say it's positive, but 7 have neutral or negative responses, you only see the 3. People then assume, well, it's all good then, because the negative stuff isn't published or like put in front of their face. But research has parameters to prevent that from happening, and so that would help buffet some of that bias, I feel like.
Well, we have the initial phase. I don't know if you know Panoe, but they do metabolic testing. Again, totally independent of us. They did a study. They study everything out there.
I saw that one, yeah.
And they came back and said, we've never seen anything like this. You're improving VO2. Their study showed an average of 7.8% improvement in VO2 max in one session, which that's not, I don't know if there's any other devices at all, but it would be a very rare thing to do that. Same thing with oxygen utilization improvement. And so the next step for that is to do it on a bigger scale. So we have more people doing the study, and in the plan there is to do a distributed study. So anybody who's got the Panoe and the NanoV could do before and after testing. But again, we're just doing before and after because that way it's isolated and we don't have other factors and have to do a 1,000-person study to even out all the other confounding factors.
Right.
And so those things are like, we're moving ahead, and Panoe is a great group with a great technology. And so where we can kind of leverage that, there's the potential to pull in enough data. But you're talking about, even though we can show significance with really small sample sizes, to publish, you really need, pretty good size sample.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you guys are doing the right things. You're on the right path, it sounds like. I don't mean to come across like, oh, what the heck type of thing, but it's just, because we see like, who is it? Apollo Neuro is a company that does this pretty well.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, Rabin. I love that dude.
He's great.
He is. He's awesome. But they publish when I say publish, I mean put it on their website, pilot study, all of it, and they just call it out. Like, this is a this is a pilot study. This is this. And I like that. I think that's effective and transparent.
It's interesting. There's an institute, I can't remember the name of it, that asked to publish all our stuff. And it's like, yeah, you can publish it. And so that might be available before too long, because that institute we're not compensating them. They're independent of us. If they publish research or republish research, they can do that. And so that might be available before too long.
Yeah.
And see, David's awesome. I like him a lot, but he's also got that great ability, because he's a former professor kind of guy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
he
he's
does.
got
He
that
has a PhD,
advantage.
MD, so it is
Yeah.
different. It's easier, and he can navigate that
He's got the
differently.
advantage of the publication,
Yeah.
the name on the publication and
Yeah.
the tax and everything.
Yeah.
But we're kind of doing stuff. I think we're pretty much doing the right stuff. We're just doing it slowly.
Right. Yeah. No, and no, I mean, we have people that come on here and say, we're not even trying to do anything. So more power to you. I'm here for it. I
Well,
love that. Let's talk about the future. This is Chloe's favorite section. What do we got, Chloe?
Yeah, tell us about what's on your roadmap, what's coming up that's exciting to you.
the studies are the work we're doing is the most exciting to me. Like there's
Mhm.
some very interesting potential there with sample sizes, getting to those bigger sample sizes. I think that's a very exciting aspect of it for me. I am excited about some of the things that are going on internationally. Dubai is a big, it's just kind of a big mover and shaker that's coming online. And we are getting more traction in the really higher end, like wellness centers, that kind of thing, like Euphoria Retreat. From them, we got a backlink from National Geographic, which was
Wow.
it was reviewing these centers that provide real wellness to people, and it was like, wow, that's a great backlink for us. And
Nice.
so the international stuff is interesting. It's also interesting as the US dollar's gone down a bit, it makes us a little bit more affordable in Europe.
Hey.
So I'm counting on you in Germany now.
Absolutely.
And we're backing off on a lot of the expos and trade shows and things like that, and kind of only doing a few of them. So those ones are interesting. We're doing some things with AI Wellness, which is a very integrated AI platform, which I think has great potential, and that's just starting out. I'm excited about that. And then I'm super excited about the potential to get this into these other spaces. Maybe it's gyms or whatever that will make it more available.
Hell yeah. Anything product wise, like a V2 of the product coming, or that more portable one that's coming, or anything like that as far as like product innovation?
It's not on the horizon.
Fair. Yeah. I was just curious.
We've amped it up. Like when we did the underlying research, we understood what was possible. And as the wavelengths that could be beneficial became available, so we could actually buy the technology needed, we've bought it. And so we don't have any more headroom for that. It's basically, we're not going to make it a better device. We might be able to make it more usable or more compact or more portable or whatever, but it's pretty maxed out on what's possible for the biophysics of it all.
Beautiful. That's cool. Are there any, we always like to ask this, are there any collaborations or people that you'd like to work with, companies, people, anything like that would be like, this would be awesome?
Oh man, I should have figured this out before. There's probably millions of them. The one that I would think most awesome is Technogym or potentially Precor. They're both looking at recovery aspects of gyms, and they've both got equipment literally all over the world in every gym.
All over the place.
If we could work with them in any way, it's like, just take it, just do this. They could make it available through their channels and networks. It could be all over the place, and it could be very affordable. People can get their own if they want, but then at least people would have access, and people with chronic illness would go to the gym just to use it because it's very beneficial and it's very measurable with any of their chronic illnesses. You help the body heal itself, reduce the oxidative damage, it shows up.
Yeah. I'm excited to see some more of those mechanisms. In relation to the other thing that I was thinking too is like Whoops or Oura device or Oura Ring or Apple Watch, or like these companies that are collecting data, I feel like would be an interesting partnership or like collaboration in some way too.
It is, and there's Heads Up Health is one that's pulling all that together, and there's another group that's coming online very soon that's very AI back end, which could be interesting. You have to go very big. You need very big samples to eliminate the other factors, like they were out drinking that night or whatever. And so we haven't really done that. People do their own self-measurement, but we haven't tried to study through those devices at this point.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, cool. Let's bring this in for a landing. The last section that we go into is our lightning lab. So we have one question we ask everybody, and then one question from a previous guest, actually. Every guest gets to leave a question for the next. So I'm excited for that. But Chloe, you want to do the first one?
Yeah. What is one question you wish people asked you more?
How can I use this device in a way that's beneficial to others?
Wow. I like that. Very other focused today. How can people use this device in a way that benefits others?
One is they could welcome them, say, neighbors into their home to use it. Come over, try it, have a cup of tea. I really got going on this because I heard Ben Greenfield talking about inviting all his neighbors over. And he lives in an area that's diverse. His neighbors are not going to be like him for the most part. And he has them come in and use equipment. And I'm like, Ben, I love that.
What a guy. He does all sorts of wild stuff. I like that. He's funny. Okay, cool. I like that. And I love the focus on helping other people helping other people. Surprise, surprise. It's almost how we survived millions of years of evolution, or not millions, but so long in tribes and in the forest with one another. Like, we had to work together. So now we're in our apartment alone, staring at glasses of screen that addict us to them. Like, it's crazy how far we've come, but off my pedestal, I digress. The question that was left for you by our previous guest, who was Erica, she's the CEO of Prepare Your Mind, which is a amino acid supplement company. You guys would get along well. She asked, what is one thing you're doing to prepare your mind for tomorrow?
Well, NanoVi, obviously.
That's a layup. That is a layup. That should be so easy.
I mean, I just don't know what else to say. Meditation every day.
Okay.
I meditate every day.
Beautiful. Do you have
and
a
that was
like?
free, by the way.
Say it again.
Me, I said, and that one's free. You know?
That is free. Do you have a specific type? Like, is it TM, or is it like, what is it?
I joined a group of wonderful, wonderful people, and we go at 6 a.m. every day, except weekends is a bit later. And it's a whole kind of a soul sync, and then there's mantras involved. It's not what I've normally done in the past, but it's got the community feel, and it's got that showing up, almost an accountability. It's like, I just do it. And that was really helpful for me because I just do a ton of things and I needed some anchor.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's beautiful. Okay, what's the question you'd like to leave for our next guest? You don't know who they are, but they're in the health and wellness space.
So obviously my only question is, what are you doing that will be most beneficial to others and humanity as a whole?
Boom.
Beautiful.
What a question. That's a big one. I like that. We will definitely ask that next, or we'll ask that to our next guest, whoever that is, next week. So that's a beautiful question, though. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for joining Decision Lab. You made it through. Congrats. Like, we're so happy that you hopped on with us. That was it was a fun time. Is there anywhere you'd like to point people or send people, or like anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
Just that if they are interested, sign into one of the forms to get the research. Sorry about that. And it's eng3.com. So it's ENG and the number 3, ENG3.com. And we won't spam you. They need to know that. We're not going to send out, you got to buy it now, and now you get a sale and all that. It's like, we just don't do that. But it's the way to get access to the research.
Boom.
If you're interested in that. Otherwise, that site itself will give you more information. There's a 3D video walking you through how it works, which is super helpful because the visual is usually way better than the voice.
We'll put the website in the comments below.
Okay, that sounds great.
Hell yeah, cool. Thank you so much for hopping on. Our viewers know that that's it for our conversation with you. But Chloe and I are going to hop on for the lab results after we say goodbye to you. So again, thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We're really grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back, party peeps. We're in the lab results section. As you know, this is where Chloe and I share what we really think about this conversation today. Chloe, any initial thoughts?
I have so many thoughts.
Yeah.
I think this is really an interesting device. It seems like they're getting really, really good results, like through testimonials and anecdotal data. And we're seeing like a lot of influencers, like big names in biohacking, like Caleb Barnes, Dave Asprey, really promoting this device. And so I'm insanely curious about it. I would love to try it. And then for me, like, loved her as a founder. I thought she did a really good job of like handling all your objections. And then the third piece to me is the science to me is really, really new. I even myself, I don't think I've fully grasped the mechanism yet.
No, absolutely not. That's because the mechanism isn't fully elucidated in research yet. That is probably why. So that was such a good cop review. My bad cop review is there's a lot of more research that needs to be done on this, but I will admit to you, I came into this thinking like, wow, this is like, what is happening? This is not good. This is bad. They are like manipulating people. Like I was just not, because of what they can't put on their website, which blew my mind. Like I just cannot fathom or understand what compliance officer would say not to put published research that makes you look more credible on your website. Like I've never heard of that. That's wild. And so my perspective going in was just a little bit sketched out. And so, but she handled everything I asked really, really well. And where there was mechanisms, where there was science, she kind of talked about it a little bit. And where there is and was research that they are doing or trying to do, she was kind of talking about it. I am very curious to go and try and get the research that, like the pilot studies and some of the stuff that they're doing, and see what's up with that, see what's going on with that. Because I was just like, two of the pieces of paper two of the things that were on the website were not in humans. It was in vitro. It was like so I just am like, what's happening here in relation, or like in aqueous solutions? It's like, okay, inside of me is aqueous, sure, but like what? And then talking about like how the easy water gets through the membrane and like some of these things that there's just not clear science on. To make medical claims or therapeutic claims is just a very large leap in my opinion. So, but she handled my grilling well, I thought. I mean, and it's not like she was trying to hide anything. She's like, yeah, the mechanism isn't perfectly known. That was nice, at least. We've had some people that just get mad at us. I'm like, I'm sorry that I'm asking questions that consumers need to know the answers to. So that's the physical phenomenon leading to a like broad health claim is the biggest like sketchiness that I would suggest. Not to say that science won't tease this out eventually. It just hasn't yet. And I would love to talk to the guy she's talking about. She mentioned him multiple times. What was his name? The main research dude, Jared Pollack, that's his name, and learn more about this. Some of the things that she was articulating, like getting into mitochondria, but if it's on the surface of a cell, mitochondria are inside cells. Mm-hmm. And then getting to mitochondria's proteins, mitochondria also have cell walls because they were eaten by eukaryotes. And so I'm just like, how does this, and you can say biophysics as many times as you want. It doesn't like, like I'm not a dumb person. Like I just want to understand. So maybe talking to this Gerald dude would be a good time, but that was just something that was kind of confusing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree.
But I mean, she's cool. She had a great story, like, and obviously has been through some stuff on the mental and emotional side. So that's beautiful that she's like still grinding. And the thing I really loved was her willingness and drive to get to more people. She's like, the thing she wanted to do more than anything was to get this in more people's hands in more ways. And I'm just like, wow, woman after my own heart. I love that. Mm-hmm. So, all right, is it past the lab test for you?
I would say it needs more testing and needs personal testing because this is something I would love to try before I recommend.
Same. Yeah.
The one thing I would say is like, and I'm saying this fairly loosely, but I don't think there's a large risk in trying. And they have a like money back return fee, which I think is great. So if you buy it and you don't like it, you can return it. And so I think they do a really good job with that. So it's definitely something where, yeah, like would I try it? Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would try it. I don't know. I would love to see more research on the mechanism behind some of this stuff, because the second she explained how it is administered through breathing, I'm like, oh, okay. I could sit on my couch right now and do diaphragmatic breathing and shift my HRV. And so I'm just like, how much of this mechanism is the easy water and the humid, the stuff going into you and affecting your cells and all this stuff versus just straight breathing exercises? And it'd be interesting to see research around a control group, using the easy water stuff or their device and just straight breathing exercises and see the differences and stuff, or something like that. Like, I'm sure there's a better experimental design somewhere out there, but I mean, yeah, I couldn't help but think, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And then all the benefits they're claiming are benefits of activating your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system, the part of your nervous system, endocrine system, immune system that are supposed to do these things. And so I'm just like, that doesn't necessarily mean that the easy water is getting into the cells and going through the membrane and getting to the proteins and doing all the helping with it. Doesn't, but maybe, I don't know. So I need more research. It needs more testing. And I I would try this. I don't think I would buy one. And I don't think I'm the ideal client even. Like, I think she said like centers are the places. If my gym had one of these, for sure, I would do it. I would try it. But I don't think I'd buy one like just off for myself personally, maybe for like my gym or something like she's describing. So any big surprises or lessons learned? Things that caught you off guard?
I thought what she'd said was really interesting at the very front part where she was talking about entrepreneurship, how the success of partnerships is inversely related to the amount of paperwork.
Dude.
I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, you think about it, you and I's partnership, there's been like zero paperwork. And we've been doing this thing for what, like 2 years now almost, like a year and a half?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting because like there's two schools of thoughts on this. First of all, like if you're not lawyering up and you're not worrying so much, it means you obviously trust each other, right? There's this like baseline foundation of trust. However, when you look at like relationships and marriages, actually marriages are more likely to be successful if they have a prenup in place. My lighting
Fair enough.
just went.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. My lawyer buddy would love to hear that. That's interesting. The thing that caught me off guard is that their inability to publish research on their actual website. That just blows my mind to a degree that I cannot fully comprehend or communicate. It would help so much. It would help them so much, I feel like, to just call it out. This is a pilot study. It doesn't have a large sample size. Here's what a pilot study means. But that was just something I was thinking about, or that caught me off guard in relation to the this one for sure. So, okay, anything else? Any other thoughts?
No, this is just something I really want to like learn more about. This easy water and how it can make a difference in healing.
Yeah, the third phase of water. That's what they call it. All right, cool. Well, that's a wrap on the Decision Lab then. We really appreciate y'all sticking around. Hopefully our lab results gave you some clarity that you needed to decide if today's brand is worth your money and time. We gave you our thoughts and our opinions for what that's worth. And if you like this no BS approach to wellness, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We love hearing from you too. So if there's a brand or a founder you want us to talk to, hit us up. Either Chloe and I or the Decision Lab itself. Did I miss anything, Chloe?
It's everything.
Beautiful. All right, people. See you next time on the Decision Lab. Peace.
Bye.